a novel called The Great Hunger, and in this novel there's a reclusive man who has a pretty vicious dog, and he puts keep out signs all along his fence. And a tragedy happens in their small town. A little girl puts her arm in, she thinks that she can pet the dog, and the dog attacks her, and she doesn't survive. And so her father is left alone. He'd already lost his wife. And the entire town was so distraught and angry and grieved over what had happened that they basically shunned this man. They stopped selling him seeds to plant his garden and his crops, and he wasn't sure how he was going to survive. And the father of the little girl decided to take some of his own seeds and go and plant them in this man's field. And the other people in the town were very confused and upset by this behavior, and they asked the man, what are you doing? How could you do this? And his answer was very simple. He said, I'm doing this to keep God alive in me. Let us pray. Oh God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So Christianity has been booming in Korea for decades now. There are so many mega churches there, it's really taking off. And we have a lot of Korean pastors in our conference, the New York Annual Conference, the United Methodist Church. And I've heard so many different versions of this kind of story of a Korean person who decides to come to seminary in the United States to study and become a pastor. And when he or she makes that decision, other people in the church are so excited that they want to be a pastor, but worried that seminaries in the United States, which are known for being so liberal, right, are going to destroy this young person's faith. And so they're given a warning. Don't let them change your mind about things. Don't let them take away your faith. And I was hearing the story again recently, and so we sort of played with that and thought, well, what if a 6-year-old, upon entering first grade, was given the same warning? Don't let them change your mind about anything. Be careful when you go there to learn. Right? It's a little ridiculous. Or entering high school, don't let them change your mind. It's because we learn through our entire lives, right? Or at least we have the opportunity to learn through our entire lives. And we're tested constantly. Right? We are given great opportunities to figure out what we really believe, what's really important to us. So Jesus is being tested again in this passage from Matthew that we just heard. This one chapter is a series of tests. Last week, if you recall, the test was, is it lawful to pay taxes or not? And Jesus had that great answer, give to Caesar what's Caesar's, give to God what's God's. He keeps passing the test with flying colors. There was another test that's not included in our lectionary. It's a question about resurrection. And again, Jesus just stuns the audience. And so the end of this passage is yet another test. Which commandment is the greatest? Now, do you remember how many commandments I told the kids there are? 613. Right? So can't you just imagine Jesus' opponents just, so eager to see, okay, what's he going to do with this one? Which one is the greatest? And, of course, he just stuns them all. And did you notice that he didn't say just one commandment? He said 2, right? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. I love that he included both of these commandments, because when you think about it, they're just 2 sides of the same coin. Right? If you love God, how can you not love your neighbor? And if you're loving your neighbor and you want to be sustained in loving your neighbor, you have to love God. And those 2 things, they just go hand in hand, do they not? I mean, they really are one commandment. And isn't it this simple bottom line to fall back on when life throws tests our way. So I want to give you a chance to think about something right now for yourself. Just think of a situation that you're dealing with right now that's challenging, difficult situation. If it helps you just to close your eyes and concentrate, then you're welcome to do that. So just think of that situation. Maybe you're trying to figure out an answer, trying to figure out the best way to deal with it. So now ask yourself, what does it look like in this situation to love God with all my heart, your intuition, your will, your feelings, with all my mind, your intellect, your rationality, your curiosity, with all my soul, that part of you that's so much wiser than the rest of you, with all of my strength, all that you are. What does it look like to love God in this situation? So just ponder that for a moment. And now ask yourself also, what does it look like to love my neighbor in this situation? What does it look like to love myself in dealing with this challenge? If you want to open your eyes, you can. So the operative word is love. And, if you ask 15 different people to give a definition of love, we would probably get 15 definitions, would we not? And, our culture likes to think of love as a warm, fuzzy thing. Love, when Jesus is talking about it, is not a wimpy, warm, fuzzy thing. Love means so many different things, but one of the things that it means is making a commitment to pay attention to something. You ever thought about love that way? If you love something, you're going to pay attention to it. Or if you want to find out what you're loving right now, what are you paying attention to? Maybe you need to shift the focus a little bit. Because love is not just a warm, fuzzy feeling. If you have that, it's icing on the cake. But love is also a choice. Love is a behavior. Love is an action that you might take on behalf of someone else. And that action might be tough love. It might be tough love for yourself. But I invite you to think about that when you're dealing with whatever challenge came to your mind just now. What does it look like to love, to pay attention to? So speaking of paying attention, there's one last story that I came across. Someone talking about a college class that they were in, and there was a pop quiz announced at the beginning of class on the reading that they had all done the night before. They had all done their reading, right? Of course they had. Of course they had not. And so the professor gave them a chance to ask some questions on the reading. And they thought, okay, let's ask some questions. But they didn't even know what to ask because they hadn't done the reading. And so one person asked a really clever question. What did you think was the most important thing from this reading last night? And the other students thought, oh my gosh, there's no way this is going to work. It's so transparent. But to their great shock, the professor answered it with a lot of detail. And they couldn't believe it. They were taking notes. They were paying attention. They were listening. They were really learning and absorbing. And he finished, and he said, okay, any other questions? And another student thought, oh, I can just try this. And he said, could you kind of put that into context a little more for us? I didn't quite understand everything you were saying. And you would think, surely that's not going to work. That's not going to work. It did. The professor continued to talk, almost for the rest of the entire class period, putting his answer in a better context. And the students were just learning. And it finally came to the end of the class period, and they were looking around, getting ready to take this pop quiz, feeling prepared for it now, actually. And then he said, so there's no pop quiz today. Happy Thanksgiving. And, you know, they learned something, not just the subject matter, but they also learned that it's not about grades, right? It's not about your performance or reward or punishment. It's about learning. And he gave them a great gift that day, and they enjoyed actually learning. And I think that's how God sees us too, right? When we're given these tests in our lives, it's not about what grade we're going to get, our reward or our punishment. It's about what we can learn. How can we learn to pay attention to God? How can we learn to pay attention to our neighbors? How can we learn to pay attention to ourselves? And so I, for one, am glad that we have these opportunities to learn how to love more deeply, day by day, because we are loved so deeply. And that's really the bottom line.